Although he was never a star, John Williamson was an extremely solid player. While only listed at 6'2", he had a fullback frame and he brought that same gridiron toughness to the court. He could face up from 20 feet and knock down jumpers all day, or he could use his strength to post up and hit the turnaround. He also used his signature fall-away jumper to get his shutoff against taller defenders. John earned his spot on the New York Nets in 1973 after being cut by the Atlanta Hawks. His arrival on the team coincided with the Nets acquiring Dr. J and Larry Kenon. He would become a valuable starter during 2 championship runs for the Nets, good for about 15 to 20 points a game. Even after the merger, John went back to the NBA and produced at a career high level, even outscoring his former teammate in the playoffs. However, John's time in the league was pretty brief, as his attitude issues and struggles with weight left him out of the NBA at 29 years old. But despite this, he was one of the most underrated scorers in the ABA and the NBA when he was hot. Welcome to PC Hoops, and let's get down to it. John was born on November 10th, 1951 in New Haven, Connecticut. He played at Wilbercross High School, winning the state title in 1968 and 1969. In the state title game in his junior season, John and his teammates Alex Scott and Clint Davis combined for 81 points in a 40-point win. In the senior season, Wilbercross wasn't able to three-peat as state champions as they lost by 2 to Bridgeport Central in the state semifinals. But John led the entire country with almost 39 points a game, even having a streak of 9 straight games with 40 points. He would finish his high school career as a parade All-American. John decided to team up with Alex and Clint as they would all play for Lou Henson at New Mexico State. The Aggies made a tournament in John's freshman year in 1970, but by the time he made it to the varsity team, he quickly established himself as the leader. He would lead the conference in points and free throws, finishing 6th in the nation with 27 points a game, along with 6 rebounds and 2.5 assists, as he scored under 20 points only once in 25 games. On January 17, 1972, in a road game against California, John scored a program record 48 points in a 2-point win. The Aggies had a pretty decent season, finishing with a top 30 offense, with them getting a big win over 5th-ranked Marquette in the season finale. New Mexico State finished 19-6, but they didn't make the tournament. In John's junior season, the Aggies regressed a lot, going from the 30th-ranked offense to the 157th. This was primarily due to John missing a couple games with injury, as the team finished 12-14. Failing to make the tournament. In 18 games, John averaged 27 points and 6.5 rebounds. Feeling that he had proved enough in college, he declared for the 1973 NBA draft, as he was chosen in the 6th round by the Atlanta Hawks. As a 6th-round pick, there were no guarantees, so he had to try out for the roster. The Hawks already had solid guards in Pistol Pete and Herm Gilliam, so John really didn't have a spot, so he was cut. But this didn't stop him, as soon he was invited to attend a tryout for the ABA's New York Nets. John made the team, and his timing couldn't have been better, as the Nets instantly became one of the best teams in the league in a single offseason. New York had traded for the ABA's poster boy Julius Erving, plus they had signed the phenom Larry Kenon out of Memphis State, giving them a nearly unstoppable frontcourt duo. It would take a little bit before John really found his place on the team, as he only played 5 minutes in his debut, scoring only 4 points. On November 8th, he finally got some real time against the Stars, putting up 19 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists, but he shot 8 for 25 from the floor. 2 games later, he dropped 25, 6, and 5 on 10 of 18 shooting against the Memphis Tams. While John could heat up in a hurry, he definitely had his cold nights, as in the next 4 games, he shot 5 for 18, 3 for 8, 2 for 7, and 4 for 14. But once he got in the starting lineup, he was a great offensive piece for the Nets, especially since Erving and Kenon drew so much attention when they drove to the basket, leaving John open for an outside shot. As he was only 6'2", he developed a one-legged fall-away jumper that he would use to get a shutoff against bigs. Julius Erving won the MVP, while Larry Kenon and Billy Paultz had all-star seasons. John finished his rookie season averaging 14.5 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists on 49% shooting, making the all-rookie team and placing 4th in Rookie of the Year voting. The Nets finished 55-29, facing the Squires in the division semifinals. In his first playoff game, John got the start, but he didn't shoot the ball too well, finishing with 10 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists on 4 of 11 from the field. But New York won by 12 behind a near triple-double from Erving. He only averaged 8 points in games 2 and 3 before breaking out in game 4 with 21 points and 5 rebounds on 50% shooting as New York went up 3-1. The Nets would close out the series in game 5 as John averaged 11 points, 3 rebounds, and 2.5 assists. The Nets faced the Colonels in the division finals. They got off to a great start in Game 1, winning by 13 as 4 of the starters scored over 16 points, including John with 17 on 58% shooting. New York would sweep the Colonels as John averaged 13 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists. The Nets faced off against the Utah Stars in the ABA Finals. John had an inefficient finals debut with 6 points on 2 of 12 shooting, but he did dish 5 assists in a 4-point win. John had similar production over the next 3 games, but New York had jumped out to a 3-1 lead going into Game 5. He filled up the stat sheet in the series-clinching game, dropping 15 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists as the Nets captured the title, with Irving winning the playoff MVP. Williamson kept the same role as a sophomore, but his minutes took a tick down. His role in the offense decreased as Irving and Kenon took most of the shots. He would still find his spots though, dropping 27 points on 9 of 17 shooting in the 3rd game of the season against the Nuggets, which was one of 12 20-point games this season for him. John was the only starter to not make the All-Star game for New York, as he would average 11.5 points, 2 rebounds, and 2.5 assists on 48% shooting. Irving won his 2nd straight MVP as the Nets finished 58-26, ending in a tiebreaker for first place with the Colonels. John showed out in the tiebreaker game, dropping 29 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals on 12 of 20 shooting, but the Colonels would win by 9, placing the Nets in 2nd place, facing the St. Louis Spirits in the division semifinals. John only averaged about 7 points in the first 3 games, but the Nets were down 2-1. In Game 4, he dropped 16 points and 3 assists on 7 of 11 shooting, but the Nets lost by 11. He had his best game in Game 5 with 22 points and 3 rebounds on 9 of 13 shooting, but he fouled out as the Nets lost by 1. In his 3rd season, the ABA was in danger of collapse as 3 teams folded in the first few weeks of the season, as there were only 7 teams remaining. Larry Kenon had been traded to the Spurs in the offseason, so there was a need for a secondary scorer beside Dr. J. John would step into that role this season as he had more opportunities to shoot the ball, taking a career-high 15 shot attempts a game. He even experimented with a 3-pointer this season, although only making 8 of his 42 attempts. John's field goal percentage would dip down to 45%, but that's expected with more volume. But this would be a breakout year for him as he had 23 20-point games and 6 30-point games, averaging 16 points, 2.5 rebounds, and 2.5 assists. Dr. J won his 3rd MVP in a row this season, while Brian Taylor showed his two-way ability, averaging 2 steals and shooting a league-leading 42% from 3. The Nets finished 55-29, facing the Spurs with their new young duo of George Gervin and Larry Kenon in the semifinals. John missed the first 3 games with injury, while the Nets went down 2-1. John would come off the bench in Game 4 and drop 31 points on 14 of 26 shooting in a 2-point win, as the Nets tied the series. He would start in Game 5, scoring 10 points on 40% shooting, but the Nets would win again and take a 3-2 lead. The Spurs fought back in Game 6 as their starting lineup scored 97% of the team's points, and they squeaked out a 1-point win, as John dropped 20 points and 4 assists in a losing effort. The Nets took care of business though at home in Game 7, as 4 of their starters scored over 20, including 26 from John on 11 of 19 shooting. The Nets faced the Nuggets in the ABA Finals, as it was a bittersweet feeling for the players, as they knew the league was on its last legs. Denver had a high-powered offense led by David Thompson, Dan Issel, and Ralph Simpson, along with their defensive stopper Bobby Jones. John dropped 17 points, 2 rebounds, and 3 assists in Game 1, but he only shot 7 of 18 from the field. Dr. J dropped 45 to carry the Nets to a 2-point win. John dropped 14, 5, and 5 in Game 2, but he shot 35%. But a 48-point game from Irving wasn't enough as they lost in Denver. An efficient 28 points from John helped New York win Game 3. New York jumped out to a 3-1 series lead behind another 20-point game from him. The Nets couldn't finish it out on the road, but John contributed with 24 points. David Thompson dropped 42 points on 70% shooting, while Issel dropped 30 points and 20 rebounds, but the Nets would lose by 6, behind 31 from Irving, 24 from Taylor, and 28 from Williamson. The Nets had become champions for the 2nd time in 3 years. Game 6 was a historic one, as this would be the last game in ABA history. The Nets are one of 4 teams to be absorbed into the NBA after the merger, but they look completely different in 1976. Julius Erving won it out of New York, so he held out until the Nets had no choice but to sell his player rights to the Sixers. The loss of their star launched the Nets into a rebuild. Tiny Archibald was a new addition to the team after an all-star season in Kansas City. They had good young forwards as well with Mike Bannum and Jan van Bredekoff. John would be the starter on a young Nets team that was far from competing. With the added freedom to shoot as much as he wanted, he played the best stretch of basketball in his career so far. John started the season with 5 straight 20-point games. He dropped his then career high of 37 points along with 6 assists in the win against Houston. By the end of January, John was averaging a career best 20 points a game, making him a top 20 scorer in the league. But the Nets were 12-30, and Tiny Archibald suffered a knee injury a few weeks earlier that sidelined him for the season. John was in the option year of his contract, and his agent, Irvin Wiener, was someone who the Nets organization didn't like. Irvin was Dr. J's advisor, and the Nets felt that he was telling Julius to hold out, as this ultimately forced them to trade him. But now that Irvin represented John, as he went to the Nets owner to ask for a new contract, the team wasn't willing to sign him, so he was traded to the Pacers for a first-round pick, which would later turn into Bernard King. Indiana had a good collection of young guys as well, mainly led by their high-scoring forward Billy Knight. After he signed a lucrative contract upon his arrival, John started in his first game with the Pacers, dropping 26 points with 4 steals on 12 of 18 shooting. He would keep up his usual numbers over the latter half of the season, but the Pacers were a very average team, with a defense ranked in the bottom half of the league, so they finished 36 and 46, missing the playoffs. John finished the season with averages of 21 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists on 46% shooting. In 1977, the Pacers traded Billy Knight to the Braves for Adrian Dantley, as he joined John and Ricky Sobers to form a high-scoring trio. John would drop another career high of 43 points on November 23rd against the Warriors. But even with all the scoring the Pacers had, their defense was still lackluster, as they were nowhere near the playoffs. It was also apparent that John and coach Bob Leonard weren't seeing eye to eye, so John was traded back to the Nets for a second-round pick. The Nets were now in New Jersey after the fans stayed away from Nassau Coliseum in droves after Irving was traded. The draft pick that John was traded for, Bernard King, was the top scorer on the team as a rookie. They had a nice floor general in Kevin Porter, while George Johnson provided great defense. But since the Nets were 9-37 at the time of the trade, King and Williamson had the freedom to shoot as many shots as they wanted. John was given the ultimate green light, hoisting up 26 shots a game in the last half of the season, but he would play the best basketball of his career. In his first 17 games back with the Nets, he dropped 38 times and 40 twice, but that wasn't the best of him this season, as on April 4th against his former team, he scored a career-high 50 points on 19 of 32 shooting. John finished the season averaging a career-high 24 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists on 44% shooting. He averaged 29 points in his 33 games with the Nets this season, which would have led the league if he could have done it earlier. New Jersey ran a lot of iso ball this year as their offense suffered, as they were near the bottom of the league in assists and turnovers, while their defense couldn't make up for this, as they finished 24 and 58, missing the playoffs. 1978 was the first full year of the King and Williamson duo. The Nets offense still mainly ran to both of them, but new additions Eric Money and Eddie Jordan averaged double digits. John would score 35 points in the season opener against Detroit, followed by back-to-back 40-point games in the beginning of December. John averaged 22 points, 2.5 rebounds, and a career-high 3.5 assists on 46% shooting. Although the Nets had 2 20-point scorers, the highlight of the season was their defense, as they were third in the league in steals and first in blocks. New Jersey finished 37 and 45, but they secured the last playoff spot in the East, facing off against his former teammate Dr. J and the Sixers. In Game 1 on the road, John really showed out, dropping a playoff career high of 38 points along with 4 rebounds and 3 assists. But he was being guarded by an elite defender in Mo Cheeks, and he committed 11 turnovers as the Nets lost by 8. In Game 2, the Nets got good production from their starters, as King had 27, Williamson had 21, and Eddie Jordan nearly had a 5-by-5 game. But he lost the game and the series as Caldwell Jones grabbed 21 points and 21 rebounds. Despite the sweep, John averaged 29 points a game in the series, outscoring Dr. J, a feat very few have accomplished. In 1979, John's career took a downturn as he struggled with injuries for the first time. He had already been dealing with some minor ailments, which led to him being benched by mid-November. He was still doing his usual damage when he was healthy though, putting up 4 30-point games by December. John's shot attempts had come way down this season as New Jersey had other capable scorers like Calvin Natt and Mike Newland. By late January, the Nets had a crowded backcourt and John was the odd man out, so he was traded to the Bullets. Washington still had their trio of Hayes, Unseld, and Dandridge, but they were a far cry from their championship season just 2 years ago. Washington had a lot of tall forwards who could slide down to the shooting guard, thus minimizing the role of John, who was undersized and wasn't the best defender. John would come off the bench for the last few weeks of the season, averaging 11 points, although he shot a career-low 43%. John would record 8 20-point games with the Bullets, as Washington finished 39 and 43, facing off against the 76ers, as John just couldn't get away from Irving. But he would have a much smaller role this year, only playing about 15 minutes. In Game 1, he dropped 13 points in 13 minutes, but the Bullets lost by 15 as Caldwell Jones dropped 18 points and 26 rebounds. John dropped 14 points in 18 minutes in Game 2, but the Bullets lost again as the Sixers shot 42 free throws. In 1980, John would struggle to stay healthy as his off-the-court issues took over. He was in a battle with the IRS around this time, being forced to forfeit his home and several cars. This caused John to lash out. frequently arguing with the Bullets management over money, plus he had shown up to camp overweight. John only played in 9 games this season, only averaging about 5 points before he was released, as he would never see an NBA court again. He would try to make an NBA comeback in 1982 by signing with the Las Vegas Silvers of the CBA, averaging 15 points, 2.5 rebounds, and 1.5 assists in 5 games, but he didn't receive any interest. John would retire as a 2-time ABA champ and a member of the 1974 ABA All-Rookie team. He averaged 17.5 points, 2.5 rebounds, and 3 assists for his career. John's number 23 jersey was retired by the Nets on December 7, 1990. According to his former high school coach Bob Salisbury, John regretted how his NBA career ended, and he often spoke to the youth about how to not repeat his mistakes. He showed his dedication to helping troubled youth by taking a job at a juvenile detention center in his hometown. However, he was suffering from diabetes, ultimately passing away in 1996 from kidney failure at the age of 45. John was far from a perfect player, as he really didn't provide much else other than scoring, but he did it very efficiently, as he was a key piece of 2 championship teams. He was one of the best mid-range shooters in the league for most of his career, as he had a couple seasons averaging over 20 points. Williamson knew he was on the floor to get buckets, as he could score with the best of them. Although his time in the NBA was brief, John was still a dangerous player you couldn't leave open, as he had a solid career, becoming one of the best players in Nets history. Thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate you guys. If you're enjoying the videos, definitely feel free to subscribe. Hit that like button. Whoever you want, drop some suggestions in the comment section, because I'm still looking through all the comments. Be safe, have a great day, stay on the grind. I'm out. Peace.